Hey, hi, hello, it's Cleverly Jones and welcome back to my channel. Today we're here to discuss Killer Sally. Now this is a documentary that's currently airing on Netflix. Now the documentary opens up and we're introduced to Sally McNeil. She's going to be the subject of the documentary. Sally is married to Ray McNeil. Now Ray is also a bodybuilder. So we get to Valentine's Day 1995. We get Sally's recounting of what happened on that day. Sally talks about completing her first bodybuilding competition back in 1987. She was in the Marine Corps and she took 4th place. Now Sally is built, as you can see from the pictures above. Now Sally says when she first laid eyes on Ray, it was lust at first sight, and she makes sure to emphasize that it was lust and not love. In Sally's mind, she thought she found the one. She thought she found a guy that was just for her and also a guy who would be a good dad to her children. Sally goes on to talk about the things that they had in common. She says they both like Arnold Schwarzenegger movies. And just after 2 months, Ray and Sally got married. Sally says they got them a 2-bedroom apartment that was very close to the water. So we're introduced to Shantina, and Shantina talks about how her mother was in love with Ray. We're introduced to John, who is Sally's son, and he talks about how the couple always attracted attention because of the way they looked. Shantina, Sally's daughter, talks about how her biological father was never around in their life. So when her mother met Ray, she was open to having, a dad, and she loved Ray as being her father. In 1990, Sally and Ray won the Armed Forces body competition. Now, this was a first for the husband and wife team to win this competition. We're introduced to Hugh, and Hugh talks about how popular Ray and Sally were and how they had the makings of a good career. In 1991, Ray left the Marine Corps to try to go pro. Now, Sally was still in the Marines, and she worked in the mess hall to support the family. Sally talks about how poor they were. Ray enters into a bodybuilding competition, and he's up against Paul Dulett. And Paul was a very big guy, so Ray didn't think he stood a chance against him. However, Ray had better muscle tone and definition, and that helped Ray to win the competition. Now we cut to a scene where we get John, Sally's son, and he talks about how he loved going to the competition, how he was in love with some of the ladies there and had some of his first crushes on the ladies that were at the competition. Shantina, the daughter, talks about helping her parents apply spray tan and how embarrassing it was, which for any, teenage or preteen girl that would be embarrassing. Now we're introduced to Wayne DeMila. Wayne is a bodybuilding promoter. Wayne talks about how the sport took off with the help of Arnold Schwarzenegger. And this was through the help of the Mr. Olympia competition and Arnold Schwarzenegger's documentary, Pumping Iron. Wayne talks about how Arnold brought about the fitness revolution. Now, Wayne helps to put together a women's bodybuilding event. We're introduced to Linda Murray. She won Miss Olympia 8 times. Sally goes on to talk about how rigorous the competition was and how feeding Ray was like feeding a lion. He would eat 114 eggs a week, and that's just a lot. And Hugh talks about bodybuilders being control freaks by nature, which is understandable because there's a lot of things in life that you cannot control, but for the most part, you can control what you put in your body. Sally discussed how Ray would go into or have panic attacks before every competition. However, Sally thought Ray's insecurities would go away once he turned pro. And to Sally, she thought Ray had reverse anorexia. And basically, that's where he thinks he's smaller than what he actually is. The documentary goes on to talk about steroid use and steroid use in the gym. Sally says if you were in the top 5 of the competition, basically it was assumed that you used steroids. In 1990, they started to drug test. And as a result of that, they noticed that the men's physiques were a lot smaller than before. They talk about how they were getting complaints from the audience because the audience members were saying, hey, we came here to see guys with big physiques, freaks, just freaks of nature. That's what we want to see. So they beg the promoters to stop drug testing. So we cut to the scene where we get the gym owner. The gym owner talks about how he used to use and sell steroids, and he actually sold steroids to Ray. Now, once Sally sees that Ray is using steroids, she also wants to use steroids. In her mind, the steroids would help her lift heavier, thus building up her body more, and she wanted to get to the top at all costs. Although Sally was open to using steroids, the only steroid she wouldn't use is testosterone because she didn't want to have, the Adam's apple and a deeper voice, but all other steroids for her were on the table. Now, Sally would buy her steroids in Tijuana. Sally would take the kids with her when she went on these trips. Now, the interviewer for the documentary asked her to go into more detail about this, but Sally didn't want to go into more detail. She said she knows that was not the proper thing to do, that she was not being a good parent at that time. So that wasn't a part of her life that she wanted to relive or discuss. Now, while Ray was pro, he didn't have a full-time job. So Sally was the main breadwinner of the family. Sally made money doing strength contests. She also made money in other ways, like doing videos. And from there, we're introduced to Bill Wick. Now, Sally would wrestle for him and he would make videos of it. Now, Bill was married to another bodybuilder, Kim Baxter, and she was basically ranked second in bodybuilding at the time. Bill admits to having a fetish for bodybuilders. Now, Sally says through her experience and working with Bill that he taught her different wrestling moves and techniques. Now, Ray, although he kind of was uncomfortable with what Sally was doing, he basically was all for it because he wasn't working and they needed the money to buy steroids and for him to compete in these different competitions. So Ray was aware of what Sally was doing to earn money. And Sally reported that she was making $50 an hour doing these strength videos and wrestling different men. However, Sally wanted to make more money and just had the idea like, hey, instead of me, making these wrestling videos for other people to distribute, I'm going to make my own wrestling videos. In 1993, Sally left the Marines. Sally did the USA competition. It was an amateur show and she placed 5th. Now, Sally wasn't able to turn pro, but she actually ended up making more money doing wrestling videos. Some ladies were making money at the time, but you had to be at the top of your game in order to make money. Now, the lady who was making the most money at the time was Linda Murray because she won, her physique was magnificent. So she won the 8 Miss Olympia competition. So she was at the top pay bracket, but that pay bracket still didn't pay as much as the men would earn if they were pro. So in the documentary, we're introduced to the term called schmoes. Now, schmoes would pay to worship women's muscles. Sally started making $300 an hour to wrestle. Now, her daughter stated that she hated when her mother would wrestle, men for money because she thought it was creepy. She thought it was weird. However, Sally said she had to do what she had to do to support her family and to support Ray's habit and to support Ray while he was doing the pro competition. Sally says that bodybuilding is an expensive habit. So Ray finally qualifies for Mr. Olympia. Mr. Olympia was viewed as the holy grail of bodybuilding competition. Now, it was a big deal, almost like the Super Bowl in their eyes. And this was because of the potential money that you could make. Now, you can earn money from the competition itself. You would earn money from exhibitions. You would earn money from layouts, magazine spreads, endorsements, things of that nature. So this would have been a big come up for their family. Unfortunately, Ray did not place at the top of the competition. He placed 15th. He simply was just not as big as the other guys that he was competing against. Unfortunately, since Ray placed so low, this made him very frustrated. And Sally said that Ray took his frustrations out on her. So we dig in a little deeper into Ray's background. Ray was given away at 2 weeks old. His mother gave him to his aunt. He was raised in poverty. Ray was also a victim of abuse. Now, Shantina describes her father as Dr. Jekyll and Mr. Hyde. We get a recounting of an event that happened. There's one night where Shantina says her dad came home and he was covered in blood. At this time, Ray was a bouncer and he told, Shantina, because she was wondering like, hey, Dad, you're covered in blood. What's going on? She said her dad was out of breath and anxious and acting different. And he told Shantina Shantina that I had to blind somebody who was trying to hurt me. Ray's friend DJ admits that this happened. DJ says that there was a guy who was getting out of hand and Ray had to defend himself and he ended up hurting the guy very bad. The police didn't arrest Ray because they knew him. They knew he worked at the club as a bouncer, but the police did tell Ray that, hey, you've kind of maimed this guy and you've blinded him for life. And so we cut back to Sally. Sally says that people have no clue of the type of guy that Ray really was. Sally says that he was a monster in her eyes. So Shantina admits that her dad was very abusive towards her and her mother and her brother. Sally suffered long-term abuse at the hands of Ray. Shantina recounts that Sally always told her that, it'll get better, Ray won't do it again. But Shantina says the situation only got worse over time. Sally talks about one time after a beating that she reported Ray to her first sergeant. However, Ray beat her until she dropped the charges. And she says her sergeant was mad at her and was pissed that she dropped the charges. However, she was like, you let him go. So I had no choice. He was threatening her and beating her. So she had no choice but to drop the charges. Sally talks about how her stepdad was also very abusive towards her. And she thinks she's just repeating the cycle of abuse, and that's why she picked Ray, as a partner. The cycle was just repeating itself. As I mentioned, Sally's son, John, he also suffered abuse at the hands of Ray, and he states that he hated Ray. He couldn't stand him and hated being in the house. Now, Sally admits to being in denial and protecting Ray. Shantina also thinks that her mom chose Ray over her and the kids. And DJ, Ray's friend, admits that he saw abuse between the both of them, basically mutual combat. And this becomes important in the next episodes. However, DJ did state that whenever Sally and Ray got physical, he would remove himself from the situation. He didn't think it was his place to step in. Later in the episode, you can see that he kind of regrets this decision, but he doesn't step in. He just, whenever they get started, he leaves. So Sally admits to having a weapon in the household. Sally states that she used it for security. It was just her peace of mind, so they did have a weapon in the household. Now, Sally admits to being physically, assaulted by Ray numerous of times. She knew that she should have left this situation, but at the time, she was just too broken to do so. She didn't have, the gumption or wherewithal at the time to leave Ray. So we get towards the end of the episode, and Sally admits to shooting her husband. This is where episode 1 ends. If you liked my review, please make sure to subscribe and stay tuned.